Hey everybody, it's Adam Farkas. Welcome back to another ODwire TV show. Now, Alcon surprised most of us by coming out with PRECISION1 contact lens. And I remember getting a preview of the lens made with smart surface technology. But the funniest thing was when I was getting a preview of this lens, I was with some other doctors as well. And we were all there, looking over, checking it out. And the first question out of the other doctor's mouth always is, when's the Toric coming out, right? This is the question that people always ask that first, so it's almost like a running gag. When's the Toric coming out? So now I'm happy to announce today that the Toric is out. And so today we have a very special guest to tell us all about it. So Dr. Erich Bauman is the Senior Director of Project Leadership and R&D at Alcon, and he knows this product inside and out because he was there for its genesis. So it's really great to have him today, who's going to tell us sort of all about it and also catch us up to date on the technology of the lens itself if you've never tried it before. So Erich, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you, Adam. Very much a pleasure to join you.
Well, why don't we just dive straight in and just sort of talk about PRECISION1 and talk about the technology for people who may not be familiar.
Sure, let's do that. Wearing them myself and having worked on the development, I'll just kind of tell you what we went through and why we decided to invent PRECISION1. And we know from the outset that the top three reasons why people drop out of lenses, particularly new wearers, are poor vision, decreased comfort, and handling problems. We also know that there was a sort of a gap in that mid-tier segment. We have Dailies Total 1 and the very premium tier, but we wanted to have something that could address those clinical needs sort of in that mid-tier. We also, having had so much success with water gradient science from Dailies Total 1, decided that we would take that core technology and adapt it to a lens designed for this mid-tier called PRECISION1. So, we know that roughly 20% of new wearers drop out in the first year, and about 57% of those don't even tell their doctor about it. The main reasons they drop out, particularly new wearers, might be a lens that doesn't handle well, it doesn't stick up on the finger properly, so they have trouble inserting it. By the time they finally manipulate it and get it into the eye, maybe its surfaces are a little bit dirty, and then it's going to be less comfortable. Maybe the vision is poorer. So we started with the premise that we would focus on a material, Virofilcon A, which is the material from which PRECISION1 is made. Bring on smart surface, which I'll speak about in a couple minutes, and work on the modulus, the coefficient of friction to get a lens that handles well, that supports a stable tear film for both vision and comfort. And that's easy to get in and remove. So that's kind of the background. Happy to dive into any particular questions.
Yeah, so why don't we just talk a little bit about that. I know that people are probably familiar with Dailies Total 1 and the water surface technology. So when you were going back and making this material, obviously you had that as sort of a reference to start with. How is this different, and what did you actually think about when you were trying to sort of reduce dropout with this material? How are you approaching that?
That's right, Adam. We did start with that, and as I had mentioned originally, we took the learnings from Dailies Total 1, which with water gradient, we know that is, just to recap where we started, it's a core silicone hydrogel material of 33% water that transitions or through a gradient to almost 100% at the surface. In fact, you may be able to see here on the screen, that would be the left-hand graphic. So the characteristics of that is that the water gradient is a thick cushion of moisture. It's a hydrogel surface treatment coating or covering a silicone hydrogel core. Knowing that, we wanted to take the benefits of water gradient, which is the very high lubricity, low coefficient of friction, and very high water content in the absence of silicone in that gel layer, and make a lens for this midstream. And so one of the changes with PRECISION1 with Smart Surface is we modified the manufacturing process to make it more efficient and in so doing, reduce some of the complexities and expenses in the manufacturing process that are involved in Daly's Total One. So based on the science, we incorporated the same water-loving polymers in Smart Surface, but we collapsed those, or we contracted those to a layer that's a microthin layer of moisture. It's about 2 to 3 microns thick. So again, Daly's Total One with water gradient, about a 6 micron layer thick cushion of moisture. Smart Surface on PRECISION1, 2 to 3 microns, still very high water, but it just gets to over 80% water rather than that almost 100%.
Got it.
Very similar coefficient of friction between the two. And if you take those two lenses, which comprise the water surface technology lenses available on the market today, excuse me, and contrast those with the graphic on your right, which is just a traditional silicone hydrogel lens with no water surface technology. The surface of the lens and the core of the lens have the same water content. It's core material at the very surface.
Right. And this technology is really quite useful, right? You always told your kids, don't sit in front of a screen all day, it's bad for you. Well, now, and I think a lot of us are like that, right? Our jobs have shifted to all being in front of screens now as well.
They certainly have. We know that, blink rates from some studies show that they're reduced by up to 3 times compared to just a visual task where people aren't staring at screens. I know, as we all have, and I'm sure the entire audience, our lives have changed. And so having a lens that supports a stable tear film not only is so important for comfort, which we understand very well, is a nice, moist, lubricious layer to facilitate that lid gliding across the surface as we blink throughout the day, but also from a vision perspective. If we remember from our optometric education, light is refracted at an interface of 2 media, air and the cornea, in the case of a non-lens wearer. In actuality, in a contact lens wearer, the light rays hit the tear film before they even get to the contact lens. So in combination, the tear film and contact lens account for about 70% of the refractive power of the eye. So a stable tear film is like having a clean windshield on your car, good refractive surface throughout that day while we're looking at screens. So those two combined together for 2 of the reasons for dropout that I mentioned, vision and comfort, and that's where Smart Surface really comes in.
There you go. And, we spoke about sort of qualitatively why this product is actually useful, but we have a little bit of quantitative data here as well, and I was wondering if you could speak to that. I can bring up a slide here just to show folks. We were talking a little bit about moisture stability, and you can see the data on the screen, and I know that you're intimately familiar with this data, so maybe you could step us through it.
I would be happy to. This is data showing an in vitro analysis of the water film moisture stability. So we adopted a method that was developed at Stanford University, actually, and it's called the Interfacial Dewetting and Drainage Optical Platform, or iDrop for short. In essence, the iDrop methodology takes a contact lens submersed in saline or in a liquid, and then the lens is lifted up out of the surface, and we use a high resolution camera to monitor that surface film, moisture film on that surface, and a precision clock to look at the time it takes for that surface to break up. And in the case of PRECISION1, we compared it with different lenses, of course, Daly's Total One, and a series of other traditional silicone hydrogel daily disposable lenses, as you can see on the chart here. And we were somewhat surprised, but very pleased to see that the Smart Surface was able to maintain a stable moisture film in this in vitro method at 30 seconds. It didn't win the race. The race, of course, was Daily Total 1, 39 seconds. But compared to all other lenses in the category, you can see these two, being the only lenses with water surface technology, far exceed the ability of the non-water surface technology lenses.
Right. And just to be clear, that data was for an in vitro study, right? So the question I'm sure that people naturally they go to next is, okay, that was in vitro. What can you tell us about sort of how things are working on patients in the real world?
Excellent point. That was in vitro, and the intent was to characterize the surface properties of different lenses. Of course, in vivo, or in the eye in the real world, we did measurements. I would not want to say these are exactly what a tear film breakup time are going to depict, but we tested clinically this lens against one of the top, maybe the top one or two most prescribed daily disposable lenses in the US, and that's AccuView Moist. And we found that PRECISION1 lenses got really high marks from patients in overall vision, overall comfort, and overall handling. In fact, we can see on the screen here, in terms of end of day vision, on a scale of 0 to 10, PRECISION1 was 8.6 compared to 7.7. End of day comfort, we saw a pretty noticeable difference, 8.0 versus 7.0. And in handling, I think one who has experienced the handling of a thin HEMA type lens like a Moist knows that it just doesn't stand up on the finger near as well because of the lower modulus and thin overall profile. Of course, practitioners, when you're practicing a patient, you may think about these individual attributes, but I think the most important or astounding overall statistic is that more people preferred the PRECISION1 over the AccuView Moist lens. And clearly that's a good lens, that's a market leader. And now with PRECISION1, we have one that's preferred.
Now, of course, the big reason that we're here today, it's, we can celebrate, we can, blow the horns and stuff. We're going to talk about the Toric lens. And again, I mentioned, people have been asking, where's the Toric lens? When's it coming? And now it's here. So can you speak to us a little bit about what that means for your astigmatic patients and, where do you see this going?
Happy to speak about Toric. It's doing phenomenally well so far. The feedback I'm getting from doctors is just incredible in terms of how quick the lens settles, how comfortable it is, how stable it is between blinks. And, the reason clearly why we need a Toric so much is that roughly 47% of people have astigmatism of at least 3/4 of a diopter. And among those who are vision corrected, only 22% of those are wearing spherical lenses, and only 10% are wearing toric lenses. So we have a lot of toric or astigmatic wearers, especially in that 1 diopter, 125 SIL range, that are being prescribed spherical lenses on spherical equivalents. And clearly the quality of vision is not as good for them. In fact, we know that astigmats are 3 times as likely to report poor vision as the reason for dropout than people with cylinder less than 3/4 of a diopter. So the penetration of toric lenses is lower, partly because they take a little bit more time to fit. They may not be as stable, and they don't give us good vision. What we've tried to do with PRECISION1 for astigmatism is design the lens building on that smart surface technology of the very low coefficient of friction. That lens settles extremely fast, on average less than 60 seconds, and it's reached its final position. It also oscillates less than 5 degrees from blink to blink. And when it does settle, it's so tight that where it locks down that the orientation mark, which is at 6 o'clock, is within plus or minus 3 degrees. So it's very predictable where it settles. And once it gets there, again, on average in less than a minute, it stays there, and the vision results we're seeing are phenomenal with it so far.
Right. So Erich, you've spoken to us a little bit about smart surface technology and about the ways in which this PRECISION1 lens can help prevent patient dropout. I think most people are a little bit curious about the actual design of this toric lens. So can you speak to us a little bit more about that?
Absolutely, Adam. We had foreseen a toric design when we very first developed the sphere. And knowing the material properties, the modulus, the coefficient of friction on the surface, the water content of the smart surface, when we went to our optical engineers and designers and said, what do we need to do to get the same level of performance with a toric version of PRECISION1 as we do sphere? What can you build in to make sure we get, the added requirements that necessitate orientational stability, such as the ballast region and keeping an equal edge thickness all the way around the lens? They, did some testing. We did some clinical work and came to the conclusion, based on data, that the Precision Balance 8-4 design, with the thicknesses of the ballast being in the 4 and 8 o'clock positions, gave the best comfort, gave the best handling, and gave the best stability. Really is what distinguishes a good toric lens from an average toric lens, is its ability to orient on the eye predictably and not, fluctuate between blinks. So the outcome with PRECISION1 for astigmatism, as demonstrated in our clinical studies and what's being, confirmed by what we're hearing from doctors using the lens so far, is that 99% of the eyes that we put the lens on can achieve a successful fit. That means neither unacceptably tight or unacceptably loose. And of those, on average, across the eyes, the lens settles in less than 60 seconds. Considerably less, actually, but we're saying the lens should reach its final location on average inside of a minute from the time it is applied. So that's very important from a chair time perspective. But also, perhaps more important, is the reliability and predictability of where the lens orients. Save a little bit of chair time, but if the lenses that come back that you've ordered don't align in the same position, then you've got to go through the hassle of bringing a patient back and changing the prescription. And what we've seen with this design is the lens, fluctuates or oscillates, less than 5 degrees between blinks. And perhaps most impressively for me, having looked at toric lenses over the years, on average, the axis scribe mark, which is at 6 o'clock, lands within plus or minus 3 degrees of 6 o'clock. So in many, many cases, the contact lens axis will, reflect the spectacle axis within, to the nearest 10 degree, which is the increments that the axes are available in. So in sum, I think in general, PRECISION1 for astigmatism is just like PRECISION1 sphere in terms of the material properties, the smart surface, stepping up from 51% water to almost 80% at the surface. Has the class 1 UV absorber that I spoke about with sphere. Everything is essentially brought over from sphere, with the exception, of course, of having the cylinder in the axis that requires a trial fit to look, line the slit beam up with that axis mark, check the final prescription. And so more similarities than differences, other than, as with any toric lens, we have to build in a ballast and an axis and a cylinder location.
And you mentioned it, I just want to reinforce to people this idea of UV protection in the lens, right? It's another sort of bonus that you can offer to your patients and, remind them of how important that is.
That's right. And, over the years, because of our light stream technology uses UV light to cure the lens, we weren't able to crack that code on putting a good UV absorber in some of our other lenses. But with this technology, with PRECISION1, it does have that class 1, which is the highest class of UV absorption. So for those who have patients that are exposed a lot to the sunlight, of course, sunglasses are important and so on, but if they want to prescribe that extra protection, PRECISION1 does have that feature.
Excellent. And I'm going to put you on the spot here a little bit just to talk about parameters, because I always do. Can you tell us sort of what parameter ranges it comes in?
I can tell you, we have the core range, plano to -6, 3 cylinders, and 90 and 180 plus or minus 20 degrees. We will be expanding the range to from +4 to -8 with 4 cylinders and around the clock axes, except for in the very high powers, we won't have the oblique cylinders. So overall, it'll have 2,300 total parameters. That should cover a good 85, 88% of all astigmats out there.
Great. Yeah, in fact, one of the funniest things in talking to people who have never actually seen a manufacturing facility, I've been fortunate enough to actually go and see this, the sheer number of SKUs that you have to create for a toric lens, it's almost unbelievable. And I think people always make that joke of why didn't the toric come immediately? Well, you know, that's part of the reason, right? The part of the trick of this is the manufacturing of the lens.
That's right. And you talk about, you know, the number of SKUs. If you take the number of parameters, which I mentioned, about 2,300, you have then a 5-pack, a 30-pack, and a 90-pack. So suddenly you have a factory where you have 7,500 pick locations just for a toric lens like that. And so the numbers blossom fast. You know, when we first started out in the development of some of our toric lenses, I used to say we have more parameters than Amazon.com has books. Of course, they've expanded beyond books, and they have definitely more SKUs now in a COVID world than we do. But that's been one of the biggest challenges, is to bring out this large array of parameters and do it cost effectively.
Yep. And it looks like you've achieved it, so kudos to you. I know this is a massive undertaking.
Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Just a sort of sneak preview for everyone else, Dr. Lukengay, who's actually had access to this lens before many other people and has worked with it clinically for a while. We're going to be doing another session like this with him to get his actual clinical experience on patients. So I think that's something that a lot of folks won't want to miss.
Super.
All right. Well, Eric, thank you so much for being here today. Do you have any sort of parting thoughts for us?
You know, all I could say is we've presented data, we've presented science. Every company is going to present data and science. I have enough confidence. You know, I was in practice myself before coming to CIBA Vision and then Alcon. All this is intended is to say, give the lens a try. I feel so confident in its performance. Let it prove itself. So take the science as the background. That'll help you in your dialogue with patients on maybe differentiating one lens type than another. But again, PRECISION1 was meant to fit in that mainstream segment, which is the largest and fastest growing segment in the daily disposable category, and do so very cost effectively. And so I think that's best for your practice and for the benefit of your patient. So all I can say is stay positive and test negative. Thank you.
All right. Great words of advice. So thank you so much for being here today, Eric.
Thank you very much, Adam. Have a great day.